this lunch, this truly extraordinary, even strange lunch hosted by President Trump for Field Marshal Asim Munir. How do the Americans, in what capacity do the Americans need Pakistan? It's very difficult to decipher what President Trump actually means when he makes a statement. The only way I could think of the need for Pakistani assets in a military situation.
Tensions have sharply intensified between Iran and Israel over the past 1 week following Israel's large-scale bombing campaign targeting Iran, based on claims that Tehran was close to developing a nuclear weapon. Iran rejected the accusations and retaliated with a series of drone and missile attacks. As we are speaking, Iran fired at least one missile at Israel's that scattered small bombs with the aim of increasing civilian casualties. The Israeli military has stated this. The first reported use of cluster munitions in 7-day-old war. As the tensions rise in this region, we are joined by an expert, Mr. Vivek Katju, a retired diplomat who has served as Secretary in Ministry of External Affairs and has a keen eye on all the developments. Sir, thank you so much for speaking to Indian Express. Sir, first things first, what I would like to know from you is that President Trump has been making so many statements on and off. So where does US stand today as we speak?
I think ultimately the US does not want Iran to have nuclear weapons. That is its fundamental position. And President Trump is committed to that position. How he wishes to achieve that is the question. The Israelis have opened a door, and that door is through waging this war against Iran, bombing its nuclear facilities. But as of now, it seems that they will find it very difficult to really effectively destroy these facilities. This is quite apart from the issue that if Iran has fissile material, which is almost bomb grade, then where is it? Finding it will not be easy. And apart from that, Iran has, I think I misspoke the last time, if Iran has fissile material, finding where it is will be difficult. Also, Iran has scientific knowledge. It has a cadre of scientists and technologists with the capabilities of nuclear enrichment and taking that enrichment to weapons grade and also converting it into a bomb. The latest one here, one reads, is that President Trump has said that he will finally decide within a period of 2 weeks. This has been somewhat of a surprise because all indications were that he was on the verge of a decision. If you recollect that he left the G7 summit a day earlier than scheduled, and it seemed that he was actually on the cusp of taking a decision on whether to take military action against Iran or not. But now he seems to be wanting to give diplomacy a chance. Now, there will be difficulties because he is demanding that Iran should give up not only its fissile stocks, material stocks, but that it should give up the idea of nuclear enrichment completely. The Iranian position is that they have no intention of making a bomb, but that they retain the right for enriching uranium up to a level that it can be utilized for civilian purposes. And under the NPT, to which they are still signatories, they have that right. If you recollect the deal which President Obama had struck with the Iranians and which was endorsed by a number of countries, including other P5 countries and Germany, was that the fissile material that was already there in Iran would be shipped out of Iran, and that Iran would restrain enrichment up to a certain degree, and that this arrangement would continue for 10 to 12 years. But now President Trump walked out of that arrangement. Biden tried another arrangement, he couldn't succeed. And now we are at this juncture. So it's very difficult to decipher what President Trump actually means when he makes a statement. He is unlike any other foreign leader, certainly unlike any other US president. He has introduced a degree of unpredictability in international affairs as a whole, and that includes this particular issue. So we just have to wait and watch.
So, meanwhile, the US is also relocating its assets to Middle East. Do you think that Pakistan is going to be one of its crucial friends as far as relocation of its bases and its assets are concerned?
There are no friends, according in my vocabulary. There are no friends in international affairs and global affairs. They proceed on the basis of interests. There has been, and rightly, a great deal of curiosity within India, and I'm sure in many other circles, about the recent overtures being made to Pakistan by the United States, which includes this lunch, this truly extraordinary, even strange lunch hosted by President Trump for Field Marshal Asim Munir. Now, the question is, how do the Americans, in what capacity do the Americans need Pakistan? The Iran operation, if the Americans were to launch an operation against Iran, would be unlike the operation they had against Afghanistan. Afghanistan was landlocked. The only way to approach Afghanistan was via Pakistan to supply their forces, or through the north, through the Central Asian republics. Hence, Pakistan played a crucial role in the supplies of materials. Thereafter, some Pakistan airspace had to be used. In fact, Pakistan had given them the use of a base in their northwest. Now, I don't think the Americans require Pakistan as a supply base or supply route to Iran. That clearly is not the case. Second, Iran is not landlocked, so the Americans have a formidable navy, which the assets are increasing, as you yourself have said, and they would be having no difficulty in supplying the navy with whatever it requires. Uh, do Americans require Pakistani airspace? Fundamentally, if they're going to use their assets, aerial assets in the Gokarsia, the B-52s, I don't think they require Pakistani airspace. They might require it in a minor way, but I don't think there's any major requirement. And certainly, they won't require it if they are using their aerial assets from their aircraft carrier groups. So the only way I could think of the need for Pakistani assets in a military situation is for ground troops. But that, at the moment, it seems outside the range of possibilities, but then you never know with the Americans what do they have, what is the end game they have in mind. If they have in mind a regime change in Iran, then it's going to create a very messy situation,
Hmm.
and they won't like to put boots on the ground. So we really have to wait and watch about what the Americans in the Iran context really want of Pakistan.
And what about China and Iran? Like China, there have been reports that China has also been sending aircrafts, and they have been turning their radars off when they enter the airspace. In fact, some stories are there quoting flight radar that some planes were there. So, vis-a-vis China and Iran, how do you see the equation unfolding or moving ahead?
Look, the Chinese, my recollection is, have sought to build a very robust uh, partnership with Iran, especially in the energy field. And they had, when President Xi Jinping had visited Iran some years ago, he had committed to making vast investments in Iran over the next 20 years. So they certainly are very keen to build a relationship.
Hmm.
Uh, Now, 2 points. I think the Chinese too would not want a nuclear Iran.
Hmm.
Uh, I doubt if there is any country in the world that wants Iran to go nuclear, and this includes the Chinese. I
Hmm.
repeat
Hmm.
myself, but I think this includes the
Hmm.
Chinese. The Chinese and the Russians, through the Shanghai Cooperation Council, have taken a position of which Iran is also a member, have taken a position which is very pro Iran. They've been severely critical of the Israeli attacks on Iran and of starting this round of hostilities. So I think to that extent, Iran has full sympathies of China. To what extent will the Chinese be willing to assist Iran should the Americans get involved
Hmm.
militarily remains a question.
Hmm.
Because the Americans will detect Chinese assistance almost immediately because it's very, there are no secrets now, very difficult to keep secrets of this nature.
So the world is headed towards a very different equation, and a new world order is in itself unsettling or trying to settle down. Where do you see India in this equation, sir?
I think India has till now been scrupulously neutral. It has excellent ties with Iran. It has excellent ties with Israel. And if you see, it is maintaining a very carefully nuanced and balanced position, urging both countries to resolve their differences through peaceful means, through the paths of diplomacy. Uh, and I feel that India will adhere to this position, and that it would be wise of India to adhere to this.
But some critics say that India is now feeling isolated, like keeping its foreign policies in mind as to where does it stand. So some critics have an opinion that India seems to be largely isolated. What's your opinion?
I don't understand the word isolation in this
Hmm.
context.
Hmm.
I think India is, along with the rest of the global community,
Hmm.
would not like Iran to have a nuclear weapon. So, to that extent, India is not isolated. After
Hmm.
all, India has always stressed that Iran must fulfill its obligations under the NPT. It is a signatory to the NPT, and as such, it is bound not to make nuclear weapons. So we made our position very clear on that. India, like many other countries in the world, has been urging that the dangers of of this war continuing are enormous, and that it will impact the region very much. It will be adversely impacting the region. We have close to 90 lakh Indians working in the Arab Gulf states. That is a very important source of energy for us. The remittances of these workers is important for all these people, Indians living in these countries and working there is very important for our economy. Uh, India has excellent political ties with these states, and therefore India's voice is a voice of reason, which is that there should be peace. So I don't see how this can be called isolation.
And so coming back to Pakistan, Pakistan, the way Mr. Munir was also hosted lunch behind closed doors, Pakistan, it seems that they have made themselves useful as far equation with India, US, and this region is concerned. And the Trump lunch obviously shows that. Do you think that America is overlooking India's interest as far as this situation is concerned? Keeping, he praised Mr. Munir also. He said, I love him. He's a good man.
Look, every country looks out for its own interests. The Americans have interests in India,
Hmm.
and these interests, I think, will continue.
Hmm.
The Americans also have interests in Pakistan.
Hmm.
Uh, they've had problems with Pakistan,
Hmm.
but now I think they want a more active relationship with the Pakistanis, and they have an eye on Pakistan's ties with China.
Hmm.
They don't want them to grow beyond a point. Uh, so we are now confronted with a situation where, after quite some time, the American diplomacy towards Pakistan has been galvanized, and that has been illustrated by this very extraordinary lunch that uh, Trump hosted for Asim Munir. So what is happening is a more seemingly a more balanced approach of the Americans to South Asia. This is not new. We have faced it and confronted it successfully in the past, and we'll have to do so again.
So recent goodwill missions which were sent by the government all over the world, do you feel that India has been able to isolate Pakistan after Pahalgam attacks? Did they achieve what they were supposed to achieve when they were sent?
Were they supposed to achieve isolation?
Hmm. No, I
I
mean they
don't
were trying to. They
understand.
were trying to. They
I
were.
I I don't understand the word isolation in the context of a country
Hmm.
that has 240 million people, that has nuclear weapons. So I, for one, as a former diplomat, uh, don't understand this word in the context of Pakistan.
Did goodwill missions achieve their mission?
I think the Goodwill Missions were sent to show that India stood united, that the political class and the people of India were determined not to accept any uh, Pakistani terror, and that if Pakistani terror took place, India reserved the right,
To
and
retaliate.
India would act forcefully using kinetic action. And that if the world wanted that escalation should not occur, that armed hostility should not take place between two neighboring nuclear powers, then the world must put pressure on Pakistan to give up its terrorism. to abandon this enterprise, which has been going on for over 3.5 decades. I think this is the message that we were conveying to the world, and how far the world will respond to it remains to be seen. But the message that we sent out was clear. It was one of unity, it was one of determination, and of the popular will in India uh, going in this direction, that its patience was, India's patience was at an end, and it was no longer willing to absorb Pakistani territory.
But don't you think it's strange, like, when India was trying to give up a statement, saying that Pakistan is responsible for the Pahalgam attack? Mr. Munir was hosted in White House by none other than the President of United States of America. So there was some kind of a gap between what we wanted to say and what was being received by the world leaders.
Look, I've told you initially that all countries act in accordance with their national interest. And I think in the United States, our delegation, which was led by Shashi Tharoor, was well received. It met senior members of the Trump administration, including, if my memory is correct, Vice President
Yeah.
Vance.
Yes.
It held publicly, it held meetings, it held interaction with the US press. So it made its position entirely clear that A, India does not accept mediation in bilateral relations. Third parties have no space for any involvement in India-Pakistan issues. And second, that uh, im- we will use force if required, as we've demonstrated after the Pahalgam attack and during Operation Sindoor. So I think that was the message that we were conveying. Separately, the Americans can practice their own diplomacy. Uh, it's not a zero-sum game. I, uh, I think, at least to me, who someone like me who's been a practitioner, I've retired many years ago, but in my own experience, diplomacy is not a game of badminton.